This is a disclaimer. I actually recorded this video roughly around May 10th to May 12th. It is currently May 24th as of me recording this now. A lot of my opinions in this video may or may not be outdated or otherwise proven false relative to the current state of the game. Either way, I still hope you enjoy my review of Season 7 and enjoy the yapping. Season 7 ends in a few days, and even though I'm crunching for finals—
They're going for the steal!
No, not those finals. I still have to talk about my thoughts on this past season. For this video, I'll be talking about how Season 7 panned out, what went well, what I think didn't do nearly as well, and some things that I would change about this season. Starting off with the bread and butter of any new season.
Let's you and me find a secret little corner and get out of these sweaty costumes.
In Season 7, the very first hero to be released was the strategist, White Fox. Now, White Fox was arguably one of the greatest healers that have been released ever because she was balanced. She wasn't a heal bot, and she even got a tiny little buff about a couple days after she released with a nice little hotfix. Even though I personally do not play White Fox, I still really like the fact that she is like an off support. Not in the same way that Ultron, Mantis, and Adam Warlock are, where you have to have a third support to make her work, but in such a way that she basically provides more utility to make up for the fact that her ult isn't a giant circle of healing. Her healing orbs, which is her primary fire, doesn't do that much healing, and does even less healing if you end up bouncing it off somebody in any way, shape, or form, whether that be the ground or the orb bouncing off of another ally. And the biggest utility in her kit is the fact that she's able to teleport to allies, similar to a certain someone from another game that is similar to Marvel Rivals. It's Kiriko. Like, it's very obvious that it's Kiriko. It's not— I don't even know why I'm trying to hide. Where this teleport would end up creating a small shield around her and her ally that she teleported to soak up a little bit of damage. It has a potential to be able to soak up certain ults and provide some people that are in the front line trying to retreat just that little bit of extra shield needed to be able to get away without actually getting clobbered. Furthermore, she also is more of an anti-dive support because of her melee side of her kit. When she goes into her melee state, she does end up giving herself and allies roughly about 30 HP per second of healing. Along with that, has an attack to do some extra damage and hit enemies upward, and then a dash that, if she hits correctly, can kidnap you and send you a whopping 15 meters into the enemy backline where everybody will completely jump you like they're in Persona 5. No other healer, let alone hero in general, has the potential to do something like that. The only main ones really being Thor and Wolverine. And even then, those two can very easily not do that job very well. Although I'm not going to make it sound like White Fox has it pretty easy, it's just that it's a lot more rewarding for what you're getting. The only thing I do not like about White Fox is her ult. I think White Fox's ult is pretty mediocre. Now, the reason why I say her ult is mediocre is because a lot of the utility that you're supposed to get from the ult doesn't really ever get to shine that often. If we go back to the trailer, we can see the biggest part of her utility relies on the fact that she's able to use one of her tails to give to an ally. On doing so, her ally would get CC immunity for a little while, alongside a small burst of healing and then some healing over time past that. In the trailer, we see this being worked by having a Star-Lord go to the backline and ulting, Strange trying to intercept it, but it does nothing because Star-Lord had one of White Fox's tails. What the trailer fails to tell you is that upon using said tail, you end up expending about 100 health from your own health pool. This concept alone makes it so that her ult isn't really that worthwhile, especially when a lot of teams in Marvel Rivals don't really coordinate anything or don't really need that kind of a boost anyway. Everybody's likely going to be looking at the White Fox, who, while she has a lot of health, it's really similar to the behavior of Hulk, where bigger hero with bigger health, you should probably stop them before they end up doing too much damage, meaning that she's going to need all the health that she can get because she's going to soak up so much of it. This can result in a lot of cases where White Fox can just ult and then not even get any real value out of it, similar to Rocket when a Jean Grey ults, or when the deployable isn't able to be shielded correctly, so then the entire enemy team just shreds it immediately. I don't exactly know how this can even be fixed either, since at its core, White Fox's ult is a completely fine ult as it stands. It's just that, relative to all the other ults, which are giant invincible circles, there are just other ults that get the job done in a much more effective and less risky way. In Season 7.5, the hero to be released was the duelist Black Cat. I love Black Cat, and I also love Black Cat. Her kit is a very unique shop-based system where doing damage will give you coins, and then you can spend those coins on a shop where you can buy one of 6 different items. Some of them giving you wall hacks, some of them turning you invisible, some of them grounding enemies, and also my favorite one, stake.com. Despite the cooldowns of a lot of these things being relatively short, and in the shop's case having virtually no cooldown at all so long as you have enough coins to be able to sustain the abilities, things like the dashes and her giant invincibility trick have pretty decently longish cooldowns that leave little room for error when trying to dive. And yes, when certain things like the coin pull or her invisibility trick only have a few seconds of a cooldown, dives also last roughly around the same amount of time, so if you end up having to use it twice, you're likely in that one spot trying to kill somebody for way too long. The shop itself allows for multiple different engagement types across maps, which makes her a lot more versatile in maps that other dives would typically struggle in. Things like Lower Manhattan, which is the most defense-sided map of all time, allows her to have a lot more avenues because she's able to use the Ring of Zorro to go through a wall, or on Araco, which is another defense-sided map, she's able to do really cool flanks on, or just be completely unseen for a little bit, because again, she's just that versatile. People like Penny don't really stand in her way nearly as much as, say, a Daredevil or a Magic would, because Black Cat just has that much more mobility and a lot more different ways to engage a single person. And the ult, among every single DPS that I have played, which isn't very many, her ult is like a dive version of what Bucky's ult is, which I really like. Having ults that are really big sustain things that only get value if you are the sole reason that a person gets killed is my favorite type of ult. Ults like Bucky, where the only way for you to actually get value is based off of you killing somebody and you designating that specific target, is one of the most satisfying things of Marvel Rivals ults, at least as far as DPSs are concerned. There is no assists in the same way that healer ults do. There's no form of comboing in the ways that a lot of tanks have to do. Black Cat could theoretically use her ult and be able to slowly but surely kill everybody on the enemy team without much direct help. Yes, the rest of your team would just apply pressure to the front line or what have you, but those final hits are more than likely going to be yours, and that is what matters, because at the end of the day, everybody just looks at the scoreboard, and if you have a lot of final hits, then you're not bad. The only thing I don't necessarily like about Black Cat's ult though is the fact that she can do some straight BS like this. In theory, is it pretty broken that a hero can do something like that? Yes, but that is curbed by the fact that no map is really ever like that. There is no map that is that open that realistically, nor would any team fight in such an open place anyway for Black Cat to be able to take any true advantage of this nearly infinite range of a dash. Not to mention that you still have to actually be really close to somebody to do the actual dash, which can leave you pretty vulnerable if you fail to kill somebody doing it, or if the entire enemy team just starts looking at you, so it's not that bad. Black Cat really isn't that broken, she's just difficult to understand because of her shop, her pretty decently longish cooldowns, and the overall fact that relative to other dives, people like Magic and Daredevil are just a lot easier to maintain. In Season 7.0, one of the biggest changes to Marvel Rivals to date happened around this time, where across all 3 roles, the rate at which you got your ult was nerfed by about 20%. Now, I actually hated this system a lot at first, but with the power of hindsight and just me being not dumb, I'm aware that this is one of the healthiest changes that Marvel Rivals has ever made, ever. Before the system was actually put in place, with people like Gambit in play, people were getting ults left and right. Not to mention that Gambit himself also got his ult left and right because of the sheer amount of healing that he actually did. To put it in perspective, before the ult nerf, Doctor Strange, the guy that I played the most, with a Gambit ult on his belt, was able to do roughly 20 to 30% of his ult in one cycle of using his kit, which would be charging up your E ability to be able to use a burst on somebody, usually 3 to 4 people. And for a tank, I was able to get 20 to 30% of my ult in one go. Yeah, I think it was about time that it left, even if I was sad at first. The only thing I don't necessarily like about the ult nerf is just 2 heroes in particular, that being Captain America and Angela. These 2 heroes do not get their ults nearly enough to keep up with the rest of the roster, ult nerf aside or not. The reason being that these 2 don't actually do a lot of damage, and much less in groups. Angela is mostly focused on trying to be a mosquito who flies around all the time and just tries to displace people or get kills by knocking people off the map. And then when she's not doing that, her brawl state when she's on the ground actually doesn't even do that much damage, and you're not going to do something like that in a giant group or in a dive kind of a manner because you don't have the means of survivability to be able to reasonably do that in the same way that a Venom does, in the same way that a dive DPS does. It's just not possible. As for Captain America, his job is relatively the same of trying to be a mosquito, but in such a way that it's going to make people panic and you're just going to pester them on the ground rather than the sky. Not to mention, with his shield being a bit of a paper plate, it doesn't really give him that many options to survive long enough to do enough meaningful damage to actually get his ult. Because of this, I think that maybe a small buff to how fast these 2 heroes get their ult would help these 2 characters actually stand out, but as it stands right now, these 2 heroes especially typically have counterparts who do what their ult does, but better, and they also get their ults faster. In Captain America's case, that's Gambit, and for Angela, that is literally anybody with an ult who CCs. In Season 7.5, another system-wide change was added to give tanks a bit of a fighting chance during combat, that being the Tenacity system, otherwise known as the CC Chain Protection system. This system made it so that after getting hit with enough CC effects in a certain amount of time, you would get the Tenacity effect, basically making it so that you are rid of any form of CC affecting you in that moment, and then any subsequent CC after that will have diminishing returns or even no returns at all. Which sounds really good in theory, but absolutely horrible in practice. The reason why this Tenacity system is horrible in practice is because of the way that they count the different types of stuns in the game. In Marvel Rivals, there are 2 forms of CC, soft and hard CC. Hard CC is the biggest problem to a lot of tank mains' complaints. Things like Luna Snow's Ice Ball, things like Mantis's Sleep, things like Penny's Web, things that would just make you completely unable to play the game until you are damaged or until the effect ran out. This is different from soft stuns, which would typically only displace you. Things like Bucky's Hook, things like Angela's Dash, things like Venom's Slam, things like the Thing's Slam, Emma's Kick, Invis Push and Pull, Strange's Team Up with Invis, Magic's Dash if she hits it. All of those things only displace you, not necessarily stun you, giving you some amount of time to actually react. The thing is, these 2 types of stuns are counted in the same way, meaning whether or not you get hit with a gazillion hard stuns or a gazillion soft stuns doesn't really matter to the Tenacity system so long as that specific threshold is met. So, people with a lot of soft stun in their kit will end up triggering this system a lot more often, which can make their kits a lot weaker because of how often they'll actually trigger it. The biggest culprit of this is Rogue, whose all of her attacks are some form of soft stun, either pulling you in, kicking you upward, kicking you downward, a command grab, or resetting your velocity, which also counts as soft stun. The thing with his slam, a bread and butter part of his kit, gives you that kind of CC effect up to 2 times if you hit somebody during the dash and during the slam. A lot of off tanks in particular usually rely on these CC effects to secure kills. Otherwise, a lot of different people, such as healers or DPSs, have too much mobility to be able to have these tanks reliably secure kills. This makes it so that they're a lot weaker with this tenacity system in place as it is right now. And with off tanks being that much weaker, this will make it so that the selection of tanks you want to play will significantly diminish, and we don't have enough tanks for that right now. If tenacity could change in such a way to have hard stun have more weight over soft stuns, or make it so that soft stuns are triggered on a different counter, or maybe even make soft stuns a higher threshold and then hard stuns have its own threshold, maybe this can be a little bit eased. But as of right now, I'm very adamant at the fact that tenacity is a really horrible system in practice, although it is a really good step in the right direction. In Season 7, only one map was released, that being Lower Manhattan. This is a convergence map where the first point is in a very enclosed area, and points 2 and 3 feature paths that are very, very tight and rely on lots of close quarters to be able to secure positions and push a team forward. Now, convergence maps overall are going to be very defense-sided, with the first point being a static, non-moving point, and points 2 and 3 being convoys. However, among all the convergence maps, Lower Manhattan is so defense-sided that it might actually take over the Convergence Venom map for being one of the worst maps to attack on of all time. See, if we look at the first point here, you only really have one entrance, that being this one into the building through the middle that you already have to go through this entire giant open water fountain area to be able to get through. Then after that, when you actually try to cap the point, you have very, 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 very limited room to be able to hide, take cover, or have some sort of a hidden spot because it's so enclosed that if someone sees you run, they very likely know where you went. You don't have much room to play around with when trying to actively brawl for the point. Furthermore, when you end up packing roughly 12 people in this one room, once ults start going off, that is going to be absolute chaos and not in the way that I like. Chaos where people are still spread out enough to where one ult isn't going to completely decimate an entire team in one fell swoop is fun. Things like the Spider Islands, things like domination maps. Those areas are big enough usually to where if someone ults, it's not going to affect everybody immediately. However, in this first point, and really anywhere during the entire map, one ult going off is likely going to affect the entire team all at once because everybody's so close. I don't like having close quarters in such a way where everybody is packed like sardines. When you pair that with the fact that there's hecka choke points all the time, to me that's just not a fun map to play on. I like having openness. I like having really easy opportunities to go onto flanks. This doesn't really allow you to do that because going on a flank basically just means go right past the tanks as fast and as far as you can and then just get to the healer somehow. While it is easy to play on defense, if you're playing competitively, you're gonna have to attack eventually, and again, it's just not fun. The only good side about Lower Manhattan being this defense-sided is that Penny, my main, does get to shine. However, that is one map, and on one point for the most part, and only when you're defending. If any hero has to be that dependent on that many circumstances, that's just a dumb reason why I'd ever make this map be a good map in my eyes. So, because of this, Lower Manhattan isn't really the best map in my opinion. If they could make the first point just a little bit more open, then maybe I could put it at an A tier, but overall, it's a pretty B, C-ish tier map. And unless I am defending, it is the worst, most miserable experience of my whole life. I have already made a much more in-depth video on Blood Hunt, so if you want to go watch that after this one, you can, although I will warn, my opinion on Blood Hunt from that video to now has changed a little bit, so I'm going to keep this section a little bit more brief and try to update my opinions as best I can. I love the fact that there's 4 separate bosses in this mode compared to Marvel Zombies, only 2 of them, and on top of that, all 4 of these bosses have separate attack patterns, making it so that you do have to learn 4 separate sets of attacks patterns, and one playstyle will not necessarily work for all the others. Rounds don't take nearly as long as they did in higher rounds, where I can still be playing in Nightmare 80-something, and it will never pale in comparison to how Nightmare 4 and Nightmare 5 were on Marvel Zombies. Taking an hour just to lose in that mode was completely miserable. Although I will say, the way the loot system is a bit of a pain. It relies too heavily on RNG, and even with the crafting system to kind of ease everything, the chances of you getting legendaries are relatively skim, not to mention, if you even get a legendary that has good enough stats that benefit you, or is a legendary that actually benefits the playstyle that you're playing. For example, if I'm playing Jeff with the swimming playstyle and I get a legendary item that's for the beam playstyle, then that legendary item is completely useless and I have to go again. But on the next legendary item, I can get a legendary for the swim build, but the stats that go underneath it aren't really that good, so then it's not even a good legendary. Progression can also be a little bit of a slog, especially if you're playing by yourself or with a single person, especially for the first time. After you complete something for the first time, usually progressing with every other hero is really easy. Just have one of your high level friends go to the absolute maximum and then just carry your level 1 character all the way to the end. You can very easily get that character up to level 60. Alongside that, it's still really fun to watch my big number go up and then I'm killing a crap ton of zombies like I'm playing peak Black Ops 2 zombies in 2009. But aside from that, a little bit more fixing in my opinion. But aside from that really small gripe, this is still an A tier mode and an insane improvement from Marvel Zombies. I'm going to review the cosmetics in my season review, and this is going to include both the Battle Pass skins alongside any major releases that happened during this time. And I'm going to get this out of the way. Why did Luna Snow get another skin? Why did Invis get another skin? These two are very undeserving of these skins. Matter of fact, that goes to Psylocke too. There is no need for these 3 to get more skins. They're completely fine. Sure, the Luna Snow one is an epic skin, but that doesn't excuse anything. There are a lot of other heroes that a lot of people would love to see, even if it's someone like Black Widow or Hawkeye, 2 people that don't get played very much. With that out of the way, I can talk about everything else. Penny Parker in this Battle Pass was a bit stupid. I don't know why she was slaughtered in the Battle Pass, given that the whole theme was college life, ESU, as they say in-game. People like Thor and Loki looked like regular college students. They're just wearing a really basic outfit. That makes a lot of sense. Doctor Strange looking like a med student makes a lot of sense. You go to college, you be a med student, you do surgery things, and he's also a doctor. He was a doctor before he was Sorcerer Supreme. That makes a lot of sense. Annabelle does not make sense. The only reason why this would ever make sense is if there were other skins in the Battle Pass that presented something like the Occult Club. But even then, this Battle Pass isn't that big for that, and if you wanted to do something like that, then this skin is a lot more suited for something like Halloween. This Penny skin could have been slotted in the shop and it still would have had the same effect, and then you could have put the Invis skin where the Penny skin is. That would make a lot more sense, and I would still be mad that Invis got another legendary, but it's not as bad as her being a shop skin and on theme versus a Battle Pass skin being off theme. Another major release that I feel like I need to talk about is the Deadpool Maid Gacha. Why does Marvel Rivals feel the need to be doing a Maid Gacha, matter of fact a gacha at all, for their cosmetics? I know that the Gambit and Rogue skins were also a gacha, and I completely went broke trying to go get them. I did not get the skins, by the way. I did not. I was too broke. But gambling on skins is stupid. If you want to go play a gambling simulator, there are websites for it. You can drive to a casino. And if you really, really want to, there's a whole genre of games dedicated to this type of system. Zenless Zone Zero, Goddess of Victory Nike, Azur Lane, Blue Archive. There are so many games that do the same thing and aren't nearly as predatory for your wallet. Deadpool really could have just been released in a bundle of skins alongside Jeff and maybe Elsa, who came a little bit later. But gachas for games whose main primary moneymaker is not a gacha system is some of the dumbest things I have ever seen on Earth. And I've seen people actually take the time to get a champion Black Widow. What sucks though is that people are still likely going to buy these things from gachas, and NetEase will likely not let up on it. But if NetEase could just not, I would love it. But I am not NetEase, and I know that they're still a company who's trying to make money, so they're going to keep doing it. Overall, this season wasn't really that problematic. Sure, there were some funky moments here and there, but they're all negligible compared to the last few seasons. For this season, I'll give an A-tier rating for good balance changes, a nice PvE mode, and an okay map. With that, if you think I forgot something, you think my opinion on something is invalid, or you wish for something else entirely this season, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. I greatly appreciate it. I love you all, and I'm out.